Tonight, the Birds of Prey reinforce the idea that Basilisk is the most boring supervillain group in the entire DCU. Batman and Robin show us that you should never ever trust a lawyer. And Supergirl goes up against Lobo, and if you thought it was the cool Lobo, no. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 120 of the Not So New 52. I am your host, and 120. That sounds like such a nice round number. Like, this isn't a special milestone or anything. There's literally nothing important about 120, but like, it feels good to say, you know? 120. Cool. Anyway, for those of you who don't listen all the way to the end of the episode, how dare you? I work really hard on that ending and you just ignore it. What's up with that? But also, just wanted to let you know, I will be talking about this later. Next week's episode is gonna get weird because it is Christmas, like actually the day of Christmas. And there's only 2 books coming out. So I've got a little bit of an idea as to what I want to do, but just letting you know for when you tune in next week, it's going to be weird. Anyway, looking at this week, though, we've got honestly not that many comics. We got like 11 we got to talk about, and frankly, that's pretty light, all things considered. So, in no particular order, we have Forever Evil, Rogues Rebellion, Trinity of Sin, Pandora, Batman and Robin, Birds of Prey, Harley Quinn, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Supergirl, Green Lantern New Guardians, Justice League of America's Vibe, Wonder Woman, and Animal Man. Of note out of that, first 2 I said, Forever Evil, Rogues Rebellion, and Pandora, are both tie-ins to Forever Evil and Forever Evil Blight, respectively. And the Vibe is its last issue, while Harley Quinn is having its quote-unquote first issue. It's issue number 1, but we had a 0 issue last month. So I don't know what you would consider the first issue. Regardless, they double-dipped and got some extra money. Anyway, that's all the stuff coming out this week. Frankly, pretty light week, all things considered. I can't really think of anything that's super critical, but you still have to listen to all of it because, actually, no, there is something critical. I totally forgot about this. Animal Man. Animal Man is critical as hell. And that happens to be the last comic I'm talking about, so you have to wait until the very end to find out why it's critical. And I'm not yanking your chain here. I'm serious. It is important. Be sure to listen to that. Anyway, all that's coming up. Let's go ahead and jump right on into it with the event comics of the week. Forever Evil, Rogues Rebellion number 3, written by Brian Buccellato, art by Scott Hepburn and Andre Coelho. So all the rogues got separated from Captain Cold because he's off being in the main book, and then they ended up in Gotham, captured by Poison Ivy. So we see Poison Ivy standing over them, and we have Mirror Master is apparently the main narrator now, basically saying like, yeah, you know, I heard this quote this long time ago that there are 2 ways to give light. One is to be the source of light, and the other is to reflect it. And yeah, he considered Lisa to be the source of light and him being the reflection, but now he doesn't know what to do. So at that point, Poison Ivy says, hey, rogues, I've captured you. The crime syndicate, because you've disobeyed them, has put a bounty on your heads, so I could easily collect for that now. And Trickster is immediately just like, oh, hey, Poison Ivy, you've heard of us, the Rogues? Yeah, that's right, I'm a member of the Rogues, too. And immediately Weather's like, dude, stop flirting. She's going to kill us. And Poison Ivy says, no, here's the thing. I'm not going to kill you, so shut up. And he starts, like, strangling Weather Wizard. And as Weather Wizard gets strangled, they all start, like, trying to go in one at a time, attacking Poison Ivy, until Trickster steps up, and he's like, well, hey, now, let's just talk this out. I'm sure a pretty lady like her can understand. And Poison Ivy's like, oh, okay, yeah, I get what you're all about, and she plants a kiss on him, which then immediately poisons him, and he just falls to the ground, like, suffocating, more or less. So, all the other rogues are released at that point, and Poison Ivy's like, look, here's the thing, I need your guys' help, more or less. I've carved out my part of Gotham. It is my garden. However, it can't get any sunlight because the crime syndicate has blocked out the sun with the moon. So what I need you all to do specifically Weather Wizard, because I feel like this is right up your alley, get me sunlight. Give me the ability to give my plants sunlight. And Weather Wizard says, I get why you think that's my job, but like I can't do that. That is outside my power set. And she's like, well, you better figure it out because otherwise Trickster's going to die in like an hour. So at that point, Mirror Master says, wait a minute, hold on. I think I have an idea. So him and Heatwave make their way deeper into Gotham. They're looking for a place, Wayne Tech Fabricators. And essentially, Mirror Master's taking charge here, and Heatwave calls him out for it. Just like, hey, man, whatever, you're in charge. And he's like, what? No, I don't want to be in charge. That's not what I said. And it's like, well, it's what you are. So as they're going through the city, Mirror Master sees a woman walking with 2 tiny children, and they start getting accosted by some like gang members, some general low-life types. And Mirror Master's like, oh, we have to stop them. They're going to do horrible things to that woman. And then it turns out it's actually a ventriloquist, and the little children are just her puppets, and they immediately kill all the gang members. And Heatwave's like, yeah, dude, this is Gotham. Like, everything here sucks. Let them do their own thing. So we go back to the garden, and Weather Wizard is making it rain on the garden, and Poison Ivy's like, hey, that's great. Thank you so much for that. And he's just like, whatever. We're all doomed anyway. And she's like, oh, okay. Are you always this much of a bummer? And he's like, no, my emotions change with the weather. That's kind of part of my power set. And they get to talking for a little bit, but he basically says like, yeah, look, there's no such thing as honor. I don't trust anybody like that. And she's like, if that's the case, why are you even with the rogues? Because like that's kind of their whole thing. So finally, Mirror Master and Heatwave make their way to the Wayne Tech place. Heatwave melts his way in, and they get into a little bit of a conversation about how Heatwave is essentially looking out for himself. He doesn't think anyone's ever going to be coming to save him, more or less, and he's not going to do the same for anyone else. And Mirror Master calls out, like, that's not what the rogues do. We all look out for each other. We're a unit. We're a group. And he's just like, yeah, it's the apocalypse, dude. Things change. So they make their way in, and apparently this is where Mirror Master got something for his mirror gun a long time back. So they're here trying to pick it up again. And they got to be real quiet because they don't know who this area belongs to of Gotham, but they don't want to be caught. So they make their way up. Heatwave isn't holding the ladder steady, though, so Mirror Master almost falls, but ladder falls and it lets out a big clang, letting people know that they are in here. And wouldn't you know it, this place belongs to Man-Bat and his army of Man-Bats. So they swoop in, they start attacking Heatwave and Mirror Master. Mirror Master has the different tools he needs, and as Heatwave gets knocked out, Mirror Master does what he can to try to fight against the Man-Bats. He knocks them into the mirror dimension, but Heatwave gets knocked down, and it looks like Mirror Master is leaving him. It looks like he's leaving Heatwave behind because he's been knocked out. But then Mirror Master comes back, offers him a hand, helps him up, and says, see, we do look after each other. And Heatwave's like, yeah, well, I would have left you. And Mirror Master's like, no, you wouldn't. So we go back to the garden. Mirror Master has this whole plan set up where he's got this giant-ass mirror inside the garden. He's tied a vine from Poison Ivy around himself so that he doesn't get lost in the mirror dimension or spit out some other place. And as he makes his way in, he searches for a specific reflection from a satellite that is able to still get some level of sunlight. So he uses that. He uses the mirror dimension to get the sunlight bouncing out into the garden. And it works. There is sunlight out in the garden. However, Poison Ivy does not pull him back immediately, and something seems like it's going wrong. Like it seems like he's getting pulled deeper and deeper into the mirror world. So Poison Ivy restrains everyone else. Trickster manages to get in and rescues Mirror Master. The sunlight, of course, stops at that point. And she's like, what? No, my plants need more. That wasn't the deal. The deal was sunlight enough for my plants, and that was nowhere near enough. And Mirror Master's like, all right, well, screw you. You went back. You knew we'd do what we could, but, like, screw you. And Trickster's already fine again as well, so whatever. So at that point, Man-Bats show up because they followed him here, and they... it's an all-out fight. Poison Ivy's basically just like, now, wait a minute, hold on. She's like, lady, we are done with you. You are no longer an issue to us. We're focused on the Man-Bat thing. So they pick up Weather Wizard and start flying him away until finally one of the Man-Bats isn't paying attention and he runs into a giant wall of ice. And turns, as they think it's Captain Cold, because they're like, oh, wall of ice, that's his thing. But nope, turns out it's Mr. Freeze along with Clayface. And it's just like, oh no, I am quite more than just cold. Get it? All right, so I like it. I was kind of hoping that this was going to be like a world traveling thing. Like the first issue was Central City, then it goes to Metropolis, and then it goes to Gotham. But seems like we're just staying in Gotham, at least for the next issue. So, I mean, we already have a book that does that. There's Arkham War going on. I don't know. It's just, once again, this book feels like it doesn't quite have a place. It doesn't have a thing that it really wants to do. It's kind of just saying, hey, here are the rogues. They're not quite as evil as everyone else. What are they up to? And maybe there will be a larger, like, consequence from this book. Maybe there's going to be some big result that we're building up to. Maybe one of the rogues is going to die or something. I don't know. But it doesn't feel like this book quite has a purpose yet. It just feels like another tie-in. So all in all, I'd say that this particular issue wasn't awful. It's kind of standalone on its own, but it's okay. I guess that's the best way to say it, is it's a 6.5. It's okay. It's not great. It's just kind of doing its own thing. But to put the Forever Evil logo on it and say this is a thing to find out what's happening in this part of the world, it just feels like straight tie-in cash grab. So, yeah, not great. Trinity of Sin, Pandora, number 6, written by Ray Fawkes, art by Francis Portela and Staz Johnson. So, last time was Constantine, where essentially they started fighting Blight, and then it didn't work out. Also, this is Forever Evil Blight, if that wasn't clear. So, we pick up here, and Pandora's still fighting against all the other sins and stuff like that. And she's recounting everything that's pretty much happened. But then she sees Constantine about to be killed by Blight. So she rushes in and uses her chain, which I didn't even know she had a chain. But it essentially gets the kid, Christopher, who's hosting Blight, out of Blight's control and slams him off to the side. So at that point, Constantine's safe for a second. She goes back to continue fighting against the sins while Nightmare Nurse fixes up Constantine. And we see the kid is just immediately overtaken by Blight again. It just immediately absorbs his body, and he just laughs and says, like, you think that's going to stop me? I'm growing stronger every second. So at that point, as she's fighting against one of the sins, Pandora sees a couple of innocents in the park, and she says, like, all right, get behind me, stay out of the line of sight, this is important. And we see Nightmare Nurse fixing up Constantine as Swamp Thing's nearby, trying to defend. But then the dragon form of Blight essentially raises its head, and Phantom Stranger's like, oh, oops, guys, he's about to do a dragon breath thing. Everyone shield yourselves. So Pandora sets up a shield for her and the bystanders, and then all of the Swamp Thing and Nightmare Nurse and all them set up their own individual things in order to protect Constantine as well. So at that point, Constantine gets up and he's like, cool, still alive. All right, so good job, everybody. And at that point, Phantom Stranger looks around and says, hey, this fire breath, like, it's too wide, it's too big, it's going to start hitting buildings outside the park. We have to go save those innocents. And Constantine's like, okay, or we stop this thing at the source, and whatever happens to the innocents is whatever. It's an acceptable loss. But before you can even say that, everyone else is already gone. So Swamp Thing uses the wood flooring in some of the buildings to essentially show up, work his way in there through the green, and provide protection. Nightmare Nurse stands outside some of the tenement buildings and makes her own shield to make sure the fire doesn't hit them. And some of the people, in their moment of being so scared, they scream out for help, wanting to get away from this, and Phantom Stranger gives them a portal to just outside of town. And we follow that for a second, where all the people who Phantom Stranger's teleported out, he's like, hey, guys, like, your home's right over there, just stay out here for a while until all this fighting stops. And one of the girls that he saves is like, you're a hero, you've saved us. And he's like, oh, I don't think, no. So at that point, Constantine meets back up with Pandora and just like, yeah, okay, that's great. So they went off and played goody hero, whatever. But meanwhile, every second that we're not fighting Blight, his circle of destruction gets wider, and therefore, like, we have no way of fighting against him anyway. Like, it's just going to keep on causing more innocents to get caught. So all the sins come up and start attacking, and Pandora's like, well, come up with a plan because I'm the one who's attacking still. So figure that out. So at that point, Nightmare Nurse shows back up and asks Constantine what the plan is. And he's like, okay, do you know about the mark of Dun Con Wen? And she says, that's dark, deep magic. You sure about that? And he's like, yep, totally. Go ahead and put the mark on the others. I'll take care of Pandora. So Pandora asks what the mark is, and he's like, don't worry about it. Just know it's necessary. We got to do this. And as Nightmare Nurse goes to put it on Phantom Stranger, he's just like, you fools. I can't believe you would do this, but sure, whatever, if we've got nothing better. So they put the mark on each other, and then Pandora basically calls out Constantine for saying, like, hey, you're willing to let all those innocent people die. I've heard that you're a great mage. Great mages find a way to let everybody live. And she's like, well, yeah, but I've heard that you're an immortal, and immortals never give a damn about human life. That's true of every immortal I've ever met. And Pandora's like, well, now you've met one who does. So Blight comes down. Pandora basically taunts him into attacking while in his human form, and immediately just wipes the floor with everybody. He beheads Constantine. He stabs Phantom Stranger and Nightmare Nurse through their chests. He sets Swamp Thing on fire. And then Pandora, being the last one left, is like, oh no, if I'm the only one left, I'll take you on myself. I'll never let evil win. And he's just like, I'm sorry. You think you even have a shot here? Like, there's no such thing as good. Evil's all there is. And he uses his spikes on his back to impale Pandora, which, you know, she's immortal, and she makes the point of like, yeah, I fall over, but like, I know I'll get back up. But then I don't. My vision starts going dark. I start losing my hearing. I've never needed to breathe before, but I take one last breath just to like exhale one last time, and yeah, she straight up dies. And she sees some sort of vision of the like Blight raising up over the city, taking full control of it. People are sharing the story of Pandora, who stood up against that dragon beast all on her own. She sees Marcus, who's still working on the box out of apparently love and devotion. And she sees the eclipse as well. And then everything goes dark again. And she sees Nightmare Nurse. And Nightmare Nurse is like, hey, Pandora, this is what the mark of Dun Con Wen does. It makes you like relive your death over and over and over again in your dreams. But don't worry about that. That's a future thing. That might drive you crazy. But in case we don't go crazy, here's the plan. And we see that the entire group has shown up in the main foyer of Terrence 13. So everyone's probably still alive to some extent, but we'll see what actually is the plan they've got worked out. It's moving the plot forward. I'll give it that. That's been a critique I've had with this book so far, is that it never felt like it was actually doing anything. It just felt like every book was kind of kept in a stasis so that when the next book picks it up, it doesn't like have any major change. This one has the change of, okay, there's a plan now. We have this entire group is now seen more or less as heroes because of the way that they're acting and saving other people. And now we've gotten back to Terrence 13, and we're going to see how he interferes with stuff as well. So progress has been made. I'm at least suitable for that. The only major problem I have here is that once again, it sets up this idea that Blight is so uber powerful that, like, I'm sure that whatever plan they have, it's thought out well enough that it's going to be like a whole thing. But like, the more they keep doing this, it's not even so much that I worry about how they beat him is going to come off as like undeserved. It's more so of, why hasn't like the crime syndicate come in at this point? Like, this is explicitly happening during Forever Evil. If this giant ass dragon shows up and says this world belongs to me, I feel like the crime syndicate would then show up and be like, I'm sorry, the hell you talking about? So yeah, I don't know, just one of those things where there's some weird little lapses in continuity where I feel like the things that are happening here should have bigger effects because of how big they've blown them up to be. But obviously, not every tie-in is going to affect the main book, so I'll take what I can get. All in all, it's a 7. It's not, like, it's fine. It's a good issue. It's just not anything blowing me away. It's just another issue of Blight where, yeah, feels like we're doing a decent job of establishing what is actually going to happen from now on. Batman and Robin number 26, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Patrick Gleason. So last issue we had Bruce, dressed as Massage Malone, break Erin McKillen out of prison and bring her to Wayne Manor. So this issue just picks up on that, and we see that they are having dinner together. And Erin's essentially asking, like, what the hell happened? How did I manage to get out there? And Bruce said, yeah, Massage Malone, he was essentially kidnapping you the whole time, and he was going to sell you to the highest bidder, who probably would be Two-Face, but I swooped in and I saved you. And she's like, yeah? Why'd you do that? And he's just like, I mean, I couldn't just let you die. Clearly you weren't safe in the jail with Two-Face running around. So, yeah, I'm giving you a safe place to stay while we figure out what's going on here. And we then zoom out and see that during this dinner, she's actually strapped to the dining room chair and she's not allowed to move. And she's like, well, then how about you let me go, damn it? And he's just like, okay, all right, I'll cut you free if you promise to be good. And he cuts off her thing and she's like, thank you. Punches him in the face and says, cool, I'm going to leave now and you can't stop me. And she's like, yeah, oh, fair enough. So she moves out. She grabs a phone from Alfred, and Alfred's just like, or she looks at Alfred and is like, what? Well, you got something to say, butler boy? And he's just like, oh, I think you're a reviled piece of crap who shouldn't ever have stepped foot through this door. She's like, thanks. So at that point, she calls up her cousin, Kieran, and says, hey, I'm at the Wayne Manor. Ready my jet. Get a car over here. We're leaving. Like, immediately. We're out. So as she's waiting for her cousin to show up, Bruce basically says, hey, you can't, like, escape yourself, okay? This all comes back to you in the end. And she calls out saying, like, you were the one who called me a monster, and the suffering I went through was unimaginable. And Bruce is like, oh yeah, the suffering you went through. Clearly nobody else in this house has ever gone through any sort of suffering, Aaron. Get over yourself. And they have a little talk for a moment about her dead brother, Shannon, and is like, hey, who did you like more, me or her? And he's like, well, you were the one who always kissed me. And just like, okay, but seriously. And Bruce says, Shannon is the only one out of, like, anyone, not just between you two, but anyone who talked about my parents to me after they died. Like, everyone else thought it was this taboo, like, shouldn't be brought up. She was the one who actually was there to, like, talk me through it. And Aaron's like, yeah, she was the nice one. And that was all ruined because of Harvey Dent. Then we get the flashback for the issue, and this was sent before the flashback of the last issue, where Aaron and Shannon are in jail, and Harvey shows up to talk to them, and he's just like, oh, hey, I thought I'd drop by. And Harvey is drawn just as such a smarmy-ass lawyer here. Aaron and Shannon are both just super pissed off. It turns out that he was their lawyer for their case, or at least he had some sort of influence over it as the DA, and essentially he managed to get their lawyer to break the attorney-client privilege and give the prosecution all of the information that they needed in order to win, and so they were put away for life. So Harvey broke the law in order to put them behind bars. And he's basically just here taunting them, saying, like, you're never going to be able to prove that, and you're going to keep on staying in prison for all that time. So no matter what, I've won here. And he just keeps chewing him out. Aaron is, like, throwing chairs and stuff. Meanwhile, Shannon's just being cold and, like, staring him down the whole time. So we see that they have been appealing this for 3 years. They've been in Blackgate. And Aaron is saying, like, look, we can keep on appealing. We can keep doing that. Shannon's saying that. Aaron is saying that to Shannon, but Shannon's like, no, we agreed. It's his birthday today. It's Dad's birthday. If we didn't get out by now, we would set our plan into motion that as long as one of us got free, both of us would be free. So they draw straws together, and we see that Shannon has drawn the short straw. And the entire plan seems to be that they're in separate cells. Shannon is going to hang herself, and she does in her cell. So Aaron calls out for help. Guard shows up, sees that happening, and then she's on the take as well. Aaron says, now you got to follow up on your end of the bargain. And it seems that during the whole sequence where the body is being brought down to the morgue and Aaron's there to like identify that the body is definitely her sister, there's some sort of switch out during that where the body that's being sent to the I guess like mortuary, the funeral home or whatever, is actually Shannon or is actually Aaron, and she manages to use that to escape. So all that happened. That was all in the past. We then go to now. Kieran showed up at the door, and Bruce calls him out and says like, oh, you're packing, aren't you? And he's like, oh, you got a good eye. How could you tell? And he's like, oh, you're wearing custom clothes. I know something about custom tailor-made clothes. So Bruce tries one more time to convince Aaron to stay, and basically is like, okay, here's the thing. I heard this story once. Alfred told me this Cherokee story. There are two wolves inside of you. And at this point, reading this personally, I'm rolling my eyes because I'm like, oh my God, we're actually doing the two wolves inside of you story. But there are two wolves inside of you. One of them is good, one of them is evil. And the wolf that will win between the fight between the two is whichever one you feed. And Aaron's like, wow, thanks for that. Bye. And so she hops in the car anyway. Kieran says straight up, like, all right, we're going to the airport. Let's go. And she's like, no. As long as we're here, as long as we're in Gotham, we're going to my sister's grave. I'm doing that before I leave. And Kieran just is like, no, that's not what we're going to the airport. You're putting us all at risk. And she's like, I'm sorry. Who's in charge here? And then immediately she realizes she's been drugged. She falls asleep in the car and has nothing more she can do. So she wakes up. She is in a graveyard, but turns out she's at the grave of Gilda Dent, where Two-Face is standing over top of her saying, hey, Aaron, your cousin betrayed you. He's going to be taking over the family now, and I get to kill you. That's the deal we made here. So Kieran is like, yep, totally. So shoot her now. Do it quick before she can say anything. But then Aaron is like, actually, Two-Face, did he tell you about the whole reason I came to Gotham? The crime families are sick of all the costume people, and they consider you to be one of those, and I was sent to take care of you. But not just me as an individual, the family. Which means that if Kieran takes over, the moment you kill me, he's going to kill you. And Two-Face is like, yeah, is that the case, Kieran? And he's like, no, question mark? And he's like, well, yeah, it's a shame. All right, bye. And he just blasts Kieran away. So at that point, gunfire going crazy. Batman comes in, and he basically does his best to defend Aaron, but Aaron is like trying to run away at the same time. So during the fight scene, we see Aaron gets strapped to a tree. Two-Face gets strapped to a statue, the one that's over over the grave that was open because they were going to throw Aaron inside of it. And Two-Face manages to shoot his way out by shooting the statue, which catches Batman off guard, and he is now trapped in this grave under this massive statue, seemingly unconscious. So, yeah, that's the issue. I really can't believe they did the two wolves thing. Maybe that's just because it's a meme more recently, but like, Christ, I have heard that story so many times. The fact that it was pulled out in this Batman one is just ridiculously corny, and he plays it so straight too. It's like a full panel, like just a monologue of like, oh, this girl asked her grandfather, oh, these two wolves inside, they saw them in a dream. And it's like, I guess, well, why not? I'm sure somebody has not heard the thing before, but me personally, it's like a joke at this point. The rest of the issue is fine. I do like the fact that Harvey, at least in this flashback, is not squeaky clean either. Like, it is a fact of he managed to basically undermine the law just in order to get this conviction. I like that. It's a good little touch that no one here is really innocent. No one has their hands clean, and Harvey wasn't just wronged horribly up till now. But yeah, no, it's just, I don't know. It's a very fast read. It didn't feel like it really did a whole lot, but it did. It just doesn't feel like it did. So, I don't know. Overall, I'd say it's probably a flat 7. It's good. It's a fine enough issue. I think my main critique right now is that I kind of expected this once they changed the internal naming to Batman and Two-Face to be more of like a team up on their side, but instead it seems to be this three-way Mexican shootout sort of thing, which is not bad. It's just not what I expected from it. So yeah, 7. That seems fair to me. Birds of Prey number 26, written by Christy Marx, art by Scott McDaniel and Romano Molenaar. So, last issue, the entire Birds of Prey arrived at Regulus's Basilisk compound. We got all these reveals of, oh, Kurt's still alive, and, what was it? Condor is maybe betraying the group, and then also that there's some Team 7 ties backs on who Regulus even is. It's a whole thing. Anyway, this issue picks up with Black Canary starting to beat the crap out of Regulus as best he can, just throwing kicks and stuff because her power set is interrupted as long as Kurt is still being kept under sedation. So it's a whole fight there, and basically, Regulus is just like, well, now hold on, stop what you're fighting for a minute. Look, here's the thing. Think about this for a moment. I was not around at the time where Kurt was saved from the end of Team 7. Who was there, though? It was Amanda Waller. She's the one who kept this a secret from you and has betrayed you. And Black Canary's like, no, not my dear friend Amanda Waller. And all I'm thinking is, I'm sorry, were they friends? I felt like they've never spoken once this entire time. But regardless, yeah, it gets Canary upset. So she uses that to essentially pretend to be sad enough to get Regulus's staff, and then starts beating him significantly with it enough to take him out for a second, and then runs over to Kurt and starts just unplugging him from all of the stuff. And Regulus is like, whoa, hold up. A, if you pull that stuff out of him, he might very well die. That sort of stuff's keeping him alive. B, it's also keeping his powers in check. So, things are going to go crazy if you do that. So then we cut over to Batgirl and Strix, who are captured by all of Regulus's people and Condor. And Condor's just like, now Batgirl, I know this looks bad, but you need to understand, none of them have powers right now. Everyone attack. So Condor immediately turns on his ex-teammates, and Batgirl's just like, I don't know if I believe you, but okay, for now we'll fight together. So at this point we see... I forget what his power set even was. This is one of the guys. He's apparently got some knives on him, and he's just like, oh, I'm going to cut you up, Condor. And then Strix just slowly pulls out her sword, and the guy goes running away. So Condor's like, oh, I'll go get him, give Batgirl a hand. So Batgirl's fighting against the really big dude, the guy who has plating. And she's, putting up a fight, but it's still not great because this guy is absolutely massive. So Strix joins in and helps out in the fight. We see Condor makes his way over to Cyclone, and she's just like, hey, I know you're never going to hit a woman, so let me go. And he's just like, you know what? For you, I'll make an exception, and just backhands her. So back with Canary, Regulus is once again saying, seriously, man, don't do it. Don't take him out. And Canary's like, I don't know whether I should believe him, but I don't care. And she gives Kurt a little kiss and continues to unplug. And as he starts coming to, he screams out in pain, and immediately Black Canary is like, wait a minute, hold on, I'm feeling this build up in my power. Oh no, it feels like the kind of power I had at the end of Team 7 where I leveled an entire country with my scream. So oops. And at that point Regulus steps up and is just like, okay, I guess I gotta stop you now. So back over to the rest of the people in the compound. Everyone who has metahuman abilities is now freaking out. So Condor, he feels his psychic powers going crazy. He flies off trying to contain that. The dude with the plating starts having his body get its plating back, but then it gets so much that he's unable to move. Cyclone just starts flying around wildly, just bouncing off the walls and causing chaos everywhere, to the point where a Condor sees her and just be like, well, I will at least use my powers to guide her away from the rest of everything else. And then, oh, right, this guy had electricity powers, the dude with the knife. He comes in with a bunch of other guards, and he's like, there they are. There are the two that... And then he just zaps all of them with his powers, taking all of them out. So, yeah. Back with Canary and Regulus again. Regulus goes to destroy Canary, like hit her over the head with his scepter. And Canary's like, okay, let me just let out a little itty bitty bit of my scream. Just a tiny bit of power. Not enough to like level the whole building, but we'll just do that. And that tiny bit of power is enough to send Regulus up through the roof and just out into the fight outside. So Condor comes in, he tries to attack, gets blasted by Regulus, and just be like, no, see, with this all going on, I also have powers now. And apparently he has like a hand blast he can do, and then never does it again. So Batgirl goes in trying to help Canary because she realizes, right, this could be a problem if she's superpowered as well. So she basically sneaks up on Canary before she's able to, like, let out her scream, puts her in a chokehold, and knocks her unconscious. She looks over, she sees Kurt nearby, and just be like, okay, I recognize that this is probably Canary's husband, but I'm just going to go ahead and plug him back in real quick and hope that solves things. So she does, and it does, and he's essentially back into the same, like, coma as before. So now, with none of them having any of their powers, Regulus goes to kill Condor. Strix jumps in the way, starts fighting against Regulus, and she's just like, oh, you're one of those Talons. I've heard about you. I really would have liked to have one of you. And then she just tackles him off the edge of the building, and she's just like, what? Jeez, you can't fly. You're crazy, lady. What's going on? But then Condor comes in, saves Strix, and Regulus seemingly plummets to his death. And as they rush inside to see what's all going on inside, Batgirl stops him, just being like, hey, Condor, here's the thing. I know you kind of had a romantic thing with Canary, but that's her husband. And he's just like, I'm sorry, what? So, yeah, that's the end of the issue there. It was good. It was fine. I'm so, as I said last time, I'm sure I did, I'm so done with, like, Regulus and Basilisk and, like, even the Kurt stuff. Like, it's not that this book is handling it poorly. It's that the other books, like Team 7 and such, were handling it poorly themselves. And I just, because it's done poorly so many times, I just associate this with that. Anything with Regulus showing up in it, I'm just immediately like, what's the point? Why are we even doing this? Because it doesn't feel like he's ever been a thing to care about. It just feels like he's a character for when you need a villain that's like vaguely super evil. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, this isn't a bad issue. It's just kind of attached to a bunch of things I associate with being bad. So I'm going to say that this one, I don't know, man. 6.5. I'll give it a 6.5. It doesn't feel like it quite deserves the 7, but I know that's not this book's fault. It's everything that came before it, but I still have to just give it the 6.5 for it. So yeah, that's the end of the trade. I have no idea what we're going to be doing next. Hopefully not anything to do with Basilisk, for the love of God. Harley Quinn #1, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Chad Hardin. So this is #1, but there was a 0 issue that basically is skippable, save for the fact that Harley was told that she was left a property in Coney Island as a dying gift from a Arkham Asylum patient that she treated. So we open up this issue with her having all of her stuff packed, like a ridiculously huge amount of stuff, driving on a motorcycle to Coney Island. And she also has this little stuffed beaver on the hood of her motorcycle, like the front, that talks to her, and it just keeps on complaining constantly. Just know that that's going on. So as she stops at a crosswalk, she sees this hipster-looking guy who is dragging along a dachshund. And the dachshund looks up at Harley with these sad eyes, and Harley looks back, sheds a tear, and then goes nuclear. So she pulls out a whip. She cuts the leash off of the dachshund and then wraps the whip around the hipster guy's throat, and then continues driving with the hipster guy being like carried behind her, and she's got the wiener dog up on her bike. So yeah, now she's just got a dog as well. So as she's making her way over a bridge, I can't honestly tell you which New York bridge it is. All of a sudden, this biker guy holds up a wanted poster with Harley's face on it and says, oh, there she is. So he gives chase after her, pulls out a gun. Harley notices it before he pulls the shot. She throws on the brakes real quick, which causes just a huge pileup of cars all around her, and all of her stuff goes flying off the back of her bike out into the road ahead of them. So that causes the biker who was attacking her to fall off his bike. Harley goes digging through her stuff and pulls out her giant mallet, tells her dog to stay, and then makes her way over to the guy. And he's just like, hey, I don't know why you were trying to kill me, and frankly, I don't care, because you just ruined my moving day. How dare you? And so she uses her mallet to smash the guy's hand, smash the guy's knee, smash the guy's nuts, and then as she says any last words, he says, don't. And she's like, those were lame last words. And then she punts the guy's head off of the bridge. So later on, she makes her way to Coney Island that night. She arrives with significantly less of her stuff, and she arrives at essentially... It's a freak show. Like, actually, it has that in big line on the side saying freak show. It also says it's Madame Macabre's House of Wax and Murder. So Harley's like, oh yeah, this is the jackpot. So she starts making her way inside. She meets one of the guys who lives there named Big Tony. He is of shorter stature. And she is welcomed in by him. And then the lawyer from the last issue who said, hey, meet me in Coney Island tomorrow to pick up your things, he starts giving the tour and says the first floor is commercial. It has like the House of Wax and the freak show thing going on. The second floor has 8 apartments, and basically all of the tenants in them are members of the freak show, so they're able to have their rent deducted from pay and whatnot. We get introduced to a few other members there. There's a goat man. There is a larger woman who is apparently dating Big Tony. Her name is Queenie. We go up to the 3rd floor, which is apparently relegated to basically just storage. And then we go up to the 4th floor, which is Harley's floor. She can use the entire floor however she sees fit. She lives there. There's also an elevator that goes down to the garden because why not? And then we get up and see the roof where it's also open to whatever Harley wants to use it for. So at that point, she's like, oh man, this is great. Everything's perfect. But what's the catch? And the lawyer says, no catch. Everything's cool. However, you are responsible for all of the back taxes, real estate taxes, insurance, and upkeep for the building, which all in all comes out to be about $6,000 a month if you don't take into account the tenants paying rent and all that. Like, this is on top of that. And he's like, all right, so are you able to keep up with that? Do you have a job? And she's like, yes, sure. And he's like, great, here you go. Bye. So at that point, she is trying to figure out what to do. Gets to be the next morning. Big Tony shows up and gives her a newspaper, a marker to circle some help wanted ads, and a large coffee. And decides to just sit on a bench and enjoy some time with her. And then we see somebody has a sniper rifle across the way and is aiming it at Harley but can't get a good shot. So next day, she's getting dressed. She's putting on a whole bunch of skin-colored concealer in order to hide that she has bleach white skin. And she has 2 jobs that she's going out to look for today. So the first one is at a assisted living home where she'll act as a therapist. She's not going to prescribe any medication, but she's going in there pretending that she's Harleen Quinzel. And they basically say, like, well, your resume is very impressive. We'll give you a tour around the facility and we'll let you know by the end of the week. And he's like, oh, fantastic, thank you. And there's specific mention of a wing of this building that is a more dangerous patients. And Harley's like, ooh, that sounds interesting. So then later on that night, she goes to interview number 2, now dressed back as Harley Quinn. And it is for a roller derby, having some auditions. And they basically say, hey, for those of you who don't know what roller derby are, here are the rules. It's a big ring that you roller skate around. One person is designated as the jammer, and you score points based on how many times the jammer can lap all the other members on the opponent's team. Every other person there is just running interference for the jammer, and you are allowed to beat the ever-loving crap out of all the other members. And Harley's like, cool, awesome. And so they put her in the audition, and it's essentially last man standing is the one who gets the gig. So she just goes full brutal, like beating up everyone around and taking them all out. And one of the girls was like, Jesus Christ, Summer is the team captain. It's like, Summer, I don't think she's supposed to be able to do this. And he's like, shush, let's just let her cook. So Harley takes out the entirety of the rest of the auditions. She's immediately hired. And basically it's, all right, if we win, you get a percentage of what's made at the door. If we lose, then you got to buy a round of drinks. So that's it. So it was later that night, she's up on the roof doing some moonbathing. And she's like, all right, so between the two jobs, I should be able to make enough money to continue living here. And she's happy about that. She feels like it's already becoming a new home to her. And as she's relaxing, she's snuck up on by a person with a sword. And as the person with the sword's about to plunge it into Harley, she gets shot from behind. And we see Big Tony's the one providing the cover. So Harley reaches into the person's shirt and pulls out the same wanted poster again. And she was like, oh, geez, someone put a hit on me for $2 million. And Big Tony says, welcome to the neighborhood, Peaches. He says Peaches a lot. All right, first issue of Harley Quinn. What do I think? Because last issue, frankly, it was not a first issue. It was an art show-off. It's basically what I expected. I mean, here's the thing. This Harley series goes big. Like, this is something that, despite the fact that it seems like not a lot of people in the DC universe, like community, care about this book or want this book around, this book sells like a lot. So clearly there's got to be something to it. And I do think that this is a good first intro to it. It lays out, okay, here's all the characters you're going to need. Here's her jobs and such like that. Here's the quirky sort of humor we're looking for. I think it does a good job of setting it up. Whether or not I like it, I will reserve the right to see how the rest of this arc shapes out. I do got to say, none of the humor I found particularly cringy. I think that the jokes it lands might not always be funny, but I don't think that they're unfunny either. I think it's just kind of like, yeah, okay, that's kind of what I expect from Harley. There are a few jokes in here that I do think line up pretty well, though. Her getting the dog scene is one where it's just cutting between their eyes, getting sadder and sadder, showing tears from not only her eyes, but the dog's eyes. Like, all that's great. I think it's a good scene. So all in all, I'm going to give this one, I'll give it a 7.5. I think it's in terms of first outing, in terms of first issue to really drag people in, it's a solid work, and I don't think that there's any shame in that. So 7.5, we'll see what happens with issue 2. Red Hood and the Outlaws, number 26, written by James Tynion IV, art by Julius Gopez. So, last issue, it was revealed, well, last issue was a flashback story, but the plot last issue was Ra's al Ghul came back and now has the powers of the Untitled, and Jason may have to be the one to fight him. So we pick up a year ago, which I think breaks every sort of timeline that has ever been established. But we see Talia is thrown Jason Todd into a Lazarus pit and is bringing him back. So a year ago, that's when that happened. And we see Bronze Tiger is there, and he's just like, oh, are you sure this is, like, why are you doing this for him? Like, what's so special about him? And Talia's like, oh, it's super important for the future. You'll see. So then we cut to what's going on in the story now. And Roz has like weird energy, electricity powers because of the Untitled. And he's just throttling Jason, being like, what did she see in you? Why did she bring you back? What did she hope to gain? And Jason's like, I don't know. I kind of just showed up mentally to this whole thing. So he gets blasted back. And Roz is like, look, doesn't matter. I feel so incredible for the first time in like centuries now. I don't even know my own strength. Regardless, whatever Dukra had planned, whatever Talia was doing, none of that matters. I am going to rip out the life from your friends, and then I'm going to kill you myself. And then we theoretically have a fight, but we don't get to see it. So we see from some other realm, Essence is watching the fight going on. It's like, oh, I have to go to help Jason. And then the ghost of Dukra is like, no. This is Jason's moment. He needs to know what to do here. He will turn the tides at the proper time. Don't get involved. So we go over to Jason, Roy and Starfire, who are all being like kept down in a prison. Jason's literally being crucified. And all the other assassins are looking down, just being like, all right, well, I mean, we got Roz back, and he's like the master, so we got to listen to him, but like, he seems a little bit crazy. And everyone's like, yeah, but I mean, I'm not going to fight against him. So at that point, Jason just starts apologizing. He's just like, oh, sorry, guys. I mean, this is all my fault. You're all going to be put to an untimely death. And he's just like, no, Jason, it's not your fault. He's like, no, it is. It absolutely is. And then Roy basically tells him, like, hey, I know someone who could save us. You. And Jason's like, God, are you telling me to get my memories back again? And he's like, yes, I am. Do you know how many warlords around the world shudder at the name Jason Todd? Do you know how incredible you are? You were trained by Batman. That's more than enough to win this. And you also have training from those other assassins, so that's pretty cool too. You can do this, Jason. You just need to, like, remember who you are. And then he looks over to Starfire, and Starfire's like, I mean, yeah, it'd be cool. Even if we're going to die, I'd like you to be the Jason that we remember. So do it for that. And then Roz shows up, and he's just like, all right, bring them to me. I'm going to kill them both. And he uses his like untitled abilities or whatever to summon a couple of swords that he's going to use to attack them. And then we get like this stare down moment where he's like, oh, Jason, are you watching? I'm going to behead your friends. It's going to be so super cool. And then Jason's like, I want to remember. And Roz says, what? Speak up, boy. He's like, I want to remember. And then a big bolt of light and all of his memories come flooding back in because his memories were inside him all along. And he gets the full flash of everything and he's like, I remember who I am. I remember everything and there's no going back now. So then Dukra, watching from the other side of Essence's portal, is like, wait, hold on. He's not supposed to do that yet. Oh, this is really bad. So at that point, Jason pops up on top of the crucifix, like saying like, oh yeah, I managed to break that lock in seconds because that's what Batman trained me to do. And all the man-bats start flying in to attack Jason, and he starts fighting them off like immediately. Lady Shiva comes in, and he's just like, hey Shiva, you told me how to deal with assassins like you. And he just like does like a Vulcan neck pinch and takes her out. So then Roz is like, I have no idea what's happening here. Bronze Tiger, get in here and take care of that. So Bronze Tiger says, hey, Cheshire, I know what you're thinking. Go ahead and do that. I'm going to keep up appearances here. So he goes in, starts fighting against Jason. And Jason is basically like, you don't have to do this, Benjamin. We were friends once. We could have been more. And Bronze Tiger's like, oh, I've killed friends. Roar. So Cheshire comes in and starts freeing Starfire and Roy from their, I don't know, binds, whatever. It's like super high-tech metal stuff, and she just melts through it with acid. So then Starfire comes over, punches out Bronze Tiger. Roy helps up Jason to his feet, and Jason's like, thanks, Roy. Sorry for getting you guys involved in my plan. And he's like, what plan? He's like, didn't you know? All of this was my plan. This was always what I was thinking. I didn't think it would have to take this long, though. And they're just like, Jason, are you goddamn serious right now, man? Because I can't take that. So at that point, we see the robot guy and the one that does magic. They are flying into attack. And so Jason says, you guys take care of them. I'm going to go take care of Roz. So then we cut to Dukra and Essence, and Dukra's basically like, well, Essence is like, yeah, Jason's going to do it. He's going to win. And Dukra's like, no, you don't get it. Like, the only way that Jason was going to, like, succeed at this and live at the end is if he didn't have his memories until the absolute last possible second. Because he has them now, he's going to definitively die. And we see him with his, like, all blades, and it says he knows that finally this is the end. So yeah, that's the end of the trade as well. So I have no idea where we're even going after that, but cool. We have Jason's memories back. That's a pro. Other pro, he managed to win over the hearts of Bronze Tiger and a couple other people. So he was able to win through that. Cons, Ra's al Ghul is just a like laughably stupid villain here. Like the fact that he gets this like electrical energy power and he's like, ha ha ha, now I can never be defeated. It's like, that's never been Raz's appeal. He's always been like the schemer or whatnot. I don't need him to have like superpowers. And then, Christ, I can only hope next issue clarifies this in some way, but all of this was Jason's plan from the very beginning. He lost his memory specifically to end up at this moment. What? No. Stop it. That's too much for me. And also there was that bit with Roy saying like, oh, how many warlords fear the name Jason Todd? I'm like, I can tell you how many comic readers fear the name. Yeah, no, it's an over-the-top issue. I don't think it's bad in any way, but it's like every sort of corniness. It's like every sort of how you accept. It's an anime ending is what it is. Of like, oh no, the specialist boy unlocks his superpowers and he's able to fight the biggest bad. And he's super competent. And all of this was super according to plan. Like, it's almost laughable, but instead it's just kind of groan-inducing. All in all, I think this one probably just gets like, honestly, I want to say 6, but that seems a bit too high even. This is not a great issue. I'm going to give it a 5.5. It's still above the average, still like competent. It's not like a horrible issue, but it just feels so out of place. It feels so unearned that Jason he had the power inside him all along because he's the specialist boy. Yeah, nah, 5.5. That's about as high as I can go. Supergirl number 26, written by Tony Bedard, art by Yildiray, Cinar. So, last time was Krypton Returns, or Return of Krypton, or whatever that arc was called. Frankly, it doesn't matter. The real last time that you need to worry about is the Villains Month issue of Lobo, where we were introduced to new edgy 2000s Lobo, who his sole purpose is that he's hunting down 90s Lobo, because 90s Lobo took his name, and this is the real Lobo. So we pick up in Bangkok on planet Earth, and new Lobo, who I'm just going to call Lobo from now on, is talking to somebody over like a comm system saying like, hey, Riala, we've got a problem because you gave me some bad info. You said that old Lobo was here, but he ain't. So what's going on, man? Don't make me come kill you. And Riala, who's this alien on the other side of like the universe, is like, hey, yo, Lobo, look, no need to threaten me. I thought that I gave you good information. Cool? Like, great. If that's not the case, I have another thing that could help you. There is a woman on Earth. She is solid. She'll know where your target is. So I will give you her information and we'll be good, right? And he's just like, yeah, totally. But why didn't you say so before? He's be like, well, she isn't really easy to reach and she's barely even human. So as Lobo is walking away from this like thing he's caused in Bangkok where there's a guy who's running like a brothel, I guess. The guy picks up the gun, is going to shoot Lobo, and Lobo turns around, whips it out of his hand, throws the gun over to one of the sex workers there, and it's like, yeah, I left you alive specifically as a mercy. I could have killed you like all of your other employees here, but instead I'll leave that up to whatever your workers here think. Maybe you've treated them well, maybe not. They'll be the ones to decide. And as he walks out, the sex workers just unload on this guy. So at that point, we cut over to the center of the earth, the block, the home of Dr. Shea Veritas, and we see she is running some big machine or something about God particles. Does not matter. An intruder alarm goes off, and we see her take off her helmet, and Supergirl shows up, and it's like, hey, Dr. Veritas, we need to talk. And she's like, hey, Supergirl, I'm not Dr. Shea Veritas, okay? And Supergirl's like, what? I can literally see, I can see your molecular level, and you are definitely Shea Veritas. But then all of the people in the room start taking off their helmets, and they're all Shea Veritas. And they say like, oh, I'm Dr. Ingrid Hansen. I'm Thomas Nakamura. And she's like, I'm sorry. So you're not clones. You're all just on the genetic level, Dr. Veritas. And then the real one walks in saying, okay, hey, everybody, don't worry about this. I'll take care of this. Let's talk to Supergirl now. And Supergirl's like, what did you do to your staff, man? And she's like, don't worry about it. I'm sure it'll come up later. Anyway, hey, didn't you have kryptonite poisoning the last time I saw you? And Supergirl's like, yeah, that's kind of why I'm here. Could you do a check on me? So they run some tests and just like, yeah, no, you're cured. There's no more kryptonite poisoning. What happened to you? And she's like, I mean, something happened when I was away for a few weeks. And Veritas is like, I'm sorry, could you give like a few more details? And she's like, right. And so she takes a deep breath and she goes over the entirety of the book up till this point, 25 issues. She's like, so I escaped from my planet and then I came here and then I fought against my cousin. And then there was this whole thing with Silver Banshee that we're not going to talk about. And then there was Hell. And then I met Power Girl. And then I went up into space. And I think I remember something about a cyborg Superman. But regardless, I don't remember it that much. Then we did Return of Krypton and now I'm here. And Supergirl's like, or Veritas is like, okay, all right, I guess. So we cut over to Lobo. He's flying to Antarctica. And he's like, yep, there are the coordinates. You're not going to see anything because it's down at the center of the Earth. But this is where you can get to it. And Lobo's like, I'm sorry, why is it down at the center of the Earth? And Riala explains, like, oh, there was some weird quantum something. And Superman essentially saved the block from like disappearing from this world together, but the consequence is it is now stuck at the middle of the Earth, which I don't know if that's canon. I don't remember that happening, but regardless, it's here. So at that point, Lobo says like, all right, look, I'll go ahead, I'll check this out, but if it ain't a good lead, I'm still coming after you. And Riala hangs up and just like, well, if that's the case, I'm going to give her some heads up. So back with the block, Veritas is like, well, you're welcome here whenever you want. I really think you could use a friend right now because it sounds like you got some emotional stuff going on. And Supergirl just starts breaking down crying, being like, I went over to Silver Banshee, Shaban's house, and she has a new roommate. And she replaced me so quick. And even then she immediately follows it up with like, I know she needed to pay rent, and that's probably about that, but like, it still hurt, So at that point, Riala gets on the phone with Veritas, and Veritas is like, hey, Riala, what's up? Why are you calling me? And she basically says, hey, I sent Lobo to you. Just give him whatever information or else you're going to be a target. And she's like, what the hell's a Lobo? I don't care. Like, I can take out one man. He's like, yeah, but this guy's a Sarnian. And immediately she's like, crap, all right, everyone shut down this place, get security up. Supergirl's like, what's a Zarnian? And he's like, well, it's this nearly extinct race to the last of their kind. And she's like, I'm a nearly extinct race who's the last of my kind. Let me go talk to him. Maybe I can get him to like not attack. And Veritas is like, all right, I mean, it's good enough as any. So Lobo walks into a cave, finds a teleporter pad, but then showing up on the teleporter pad is Supergirl, who just says like, hey, stop right there. And Lobo's like, I'm sorry, what is this? What's going on? And Supergirl flies up and is just like, look, have you ever heard of Krypton? I'm a Kryptonian. We both are the last of our kind. We shouldn't have fighting and stuff like that. And Lobo just stops her, just puts a finger up and saying like, honey, what you don't know about me could fill an entire planet. You seriously are overestimating this. So I am just going to talk to your boss and you need to get out of my way. And so he throws a net at her to take her out of the way and says like, that's an indestructible net. You'll be here for a while. And then immediately she breaks out of it. And Lobo's like, ooh, okay, you're stronger than expected. And then Supergirl just tackles him out of the cave and Lobo throws a kick. Supergirl's surprised that it hurts, and she's like, well, fine, let me give you some of mine. And so she punches Lobo as hard as she can, and she sees him go through like multiple mountains. Finally, she catches up with him, sees that his neck is twisted like 180 degrees backwards, and she's like, oh, Jesus, I thought you could take it. I didn't mean to kill you. Oh, gosh. So, new Lobo's dead. Didn't have to deal with any of that. He's just dead. I'm so happy about it. Of course he's not dead. Of course he's coming back. I mean, it's okay. Here's the thing. I know that Supergirl is written to be like an emotionally fragile teenage girl who has like a lot of issues she's working through, but however true it may be, it still frustrates me, that panel of saying like, Shaban has a new roommate and she didn't even talk to me about it. And I'm like, I get it. she's upset. She feels like she has no place to go. But like, there's a reason. There's multiple reasons, but there's a specific reason as well as to why you don't want to talk to like teenage girls like that, because it's infuriating, the things that are like so important like that. Anyway, all in all, I like this issue. I think it's funny. I think it's setting up some good stuff. I don't care about Lobo, but I think the writing in this is actually better than the writing in his first appearance in that Villains Month issue. So I'm okay with it here. He did still say at one point the sorry, not sorry. Throw that out. Stop that. I never want to hear that again. But beyond that, it's a fine enough issue. And if this is the next stage for Supergirl, whatever she's going to be doing, I'm okay with it. I think it's a good enough setup. So we'll see where it goes from here. All in all, I'll give it 7.5. I enjoyed it. It was a good issue. Green Lantern New Guardian number 26, written by Justin Jordan, art by Brad Walker and Geraldo Borges. So, this is the second part of whatever this arc is, where Kyle, Carol, and a bunch of the Guardians went to a planet called Exurus. It is a paradise planet, but it turns out it's only a paradise because they were ripping the good things out of other timelines. And so, one of those bad timelines went through the portal and started their attack. So, we open up with the bad version of one of the guys called Nyas, which I'm just going to call him Nyas, and the good one will be Good Nyas. So we see Kyle goes and starts to attack Nyas, and turns out that because this planet is a paradise planet and there's this like computer thing that's running everything, it actually stops him from hitting Nyas. And it says, yeah, no, you can't hit us because of everything still in place here. So he's like, all right, fair enough, but let me try something else instead. And like, let me throw more power at it. And the Guardians come in and are just like, no, Kyle, you don't understand. Like the structure, the program in place, it only has enough power to withstand so much. If you keep pushing here, people will start getting hurt out there, and you can't do that. And Kyle's like, all right, fine, whatever. So he just contains Nyas and the other bad people coming through the timeline. And that's where we see that Nyas has found some ways around the structure. And he says, yeah, I can't throw a punch, but I can press this button. And he presses the button, and the spear that he threw through the other person before explodes. And Kyle's like, no, Jesus Christ, no, that's awful. So at that point, the Carol and Kyle are like, all right, Carol, go take care of things out there. Make sure everyone is staying safe. Get them away from here. And then we're all going to get ready and we're going to fight against this incoming horde. And we see Nyas is essentially like, oh, this isn't going to be a fight. This is going to be a smackdown. And he sends out all the rest of these people from the bad timeline and starts attacking them. So through the portal comes the bad version of the old guy who was killed. And frankly, I can't remember his name. I'm sure it'll pop up later, but he's like, hey, yeah, you wanted me through here so that I can see all of their like equations and stuff for the structure, and I can alter it so that we're able to win this. And Nyas is like, yep, go ahead, get on that. So at this point, we see up in the sky, like the structure is showing all of these different timelines that have completely fallen apart and are being destroyed. And it turns out that because of the way they're pushing the structure, it's essentially folded over itself into 4D space, blah, blah, blah. Barely makes any sense. So Kyle manages to rally the troops. He gets up. He starts attacking Nyas and all the other people. Carol's begging for help, but nothing's going to come because they're more focused on that. We see the Guardians are essentially trying to talk to the good Nyas and say, hey, like, what can we do here? You got to help us out. This is like your society's thing. So all in all, it's just the fight continues on. Kyle's primary focus is against Nyas, who is able to use his own version of the technology and the structure to fight against Kyle's constructs. And the basic battle between them verbally is coming down to they want this universe because they believe it rightfully belongs to them because it was stuff taken from their timeline, as well as millions of others, but specifically theirs as well. And they, like, Kyle's like, okay, but you're going to kill them to do that. That doesn't make you any better than them. And he's like, yes, it does. I'm killing the monsters. I'm killing the bad people. Isn't that pretty much what you do? Like, it's essentially the same thing. So it's this battle of beliefs there on that side. And then we keep on saying, like, all right, fine, if you're not going to let me kill them, I'm going to tear down their paradise. So we see the rest of them continue on, and Nias goes up and talks to the evil version of his grandfather or whatever, and he basically says, like, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that our people did this to your timeline. I'm sorry that all this happened. And the evil version of his grandfather is like, yeah, this isn't what I expected. Like, when we crossed over, we expected you all to be this, like, horrific race of monsters that could do such terrible things to us in our timeline. But we get here and you're just people, like peaceful people. Like, that doesn't, my worldview is kind of shattering here. And he realizes, and like, also, we came here, we thought it was going to be like a holy victory. We were going to come here and kill all of you, but now it doesn't feel so right. So yeah, no, I'm not all on board with this. So we see that the evil version of the old guy, whatever his name may be, essentially flips the equations around and makes it so that the portals are shut down. There's no more reinforcements coming, and all of the technology that Nias was using fed back to like a server over there, so it stops basically protecting him. And Kyle sees the little pad he's been pushing on his wrist in order to control all the tech, and he just smashes it. He's like, I didn't punch you, I punched the computer. The structure doesn't have a problem with that. So now this version of Nias has no power at all, so he just goes in and he's like trying to punch Kyle, but of course he's unable to, and Kyle puts him into a construct and says, hey, I want you to look at this. And he goes outside where all this destruction has been, and already the structure starts rebuilding itself. And he's like, look at these people. These people who lived here are caring for your soldiers. They are trying to pick them up as if they were one and the same. You came here to destroy, but, you know, it's the Dark Knight. Not everyone deep down is as sick as you. So at this point, the grandfather stands up and he's like, I don't know what to do. We never wanted to destroy things. How can we make this better? And he's like, build them back up. Help them fix things. But more importantly here, and he tells this to Nias, you need to take this technology, go back through to every single timeline that you stole from, and share the technology with them. There's no reason you couldn't have done that in the first place. You just put out, like, you took from them and you never intended to give back. Give back now and then shut the portals and never do it again. And Nias is like, okay. And Kyle explicitly puts out there, and you better do it or I will come back and take care of things, and you won't like the way I do that. So Kyle flies off, as do the Guardians and Carol. And Carol's like, hey, you were never really one to lay down ultimatums like that. That was never your thing before. What's up? And Kyle's like, well, I've got all this power. I'm literally the White Lantern. Like, if the things aren't going to get better, then maybe I should take some initiative. Maybe I should be proactive in fixing things. If I have to be the one that lays down the law, so be it. And as Kyle flies off, we see some of the Guardians talking, and they say, yeah, we brought Kyle here to Exurus to see if he was ready, but he's not. And the one guy who looked into Kyle's mind like 3 issues ago says, beyond the source wall, he saw it, he doesn't remember it, but they are coming, and he is not ready. So something's beyond the source wall, and it's coming for the universe, and blah, blah, blah. We'll see what happens there. All in all, I'm kind of disappointed because I was really praising this the last time because I was really intrigued in this idea of, you know, going through different timelines and taking basically just the good decisions and making them their own thing. But I feel like we didn't do anything with it. You know, I didn't feel like we explored that as deeply as we could, like the implications to it. Mind you, I do like the idea of this other universe seeing them as like monsters and they get here and it's not. That's also a creative idea. I don't know. I just feel like neither of them were explored as deeply as they could have been. We probably should have just focused on the one, and then the other one is like whatever. But yeah, no, it's a creative concept. I do feel like this is kind of just the middle bit to a larger story. Maybe not even the middle bit. It feels like the early setup to a larger story. So we'll see where all we get. But in the end, I think this is probably just a flat 7. It's not fantastic, but it's not a bad issue either. It is kind of confusing to read at parts because you have duplicates of everybody running around, but context clues give you a lot if you pay attention to them. So it's not that bad. But yeah, 7's where it fits. Justice League of America's Vibe number 10, written by Sterling Gates, art by Derlis Santacruz. This is the final issue, and the last issue we had Breacher essentially setting Cisco off to be a bomb. Vibe is now a bomb, and he's going to blow up a whole multiversal thing. So this is all told in flashback after everything's said and done. We have Argus, where Amanda Waller's sitting at her desk and is looking over the file of Vibe, and then all of a sudden Rupture's axe just hits the desk, and Waller's like, I wondered when you were going to show up. And we see it's Vibe, and he's like, hey, Waller, we need to talk. And Waller's like, yeah, sure, just take this thing out of my desk. And he's like, no, you can ask me nicely. And he's like, okay, take this thing out of my desk, please, and please explain to me where in the hell you went after the whole circus incident. And Cisco's like, okay, here's what I'll tell you. How long has it been? He's like, 3 weeks. And it's like, okay, so it wasn't my choice to leave. The whole big thing came up. I was dragged out by Rupture, whole shebang. But we say, all right, we're in Pyradel. Breacher set me off to be a bomb. And I tried to disarm it, but there was nothing I could do. And I was totally ready to accept my fate when all of a sudden my brother, Armando, aka Rupture, showed up and used his axe to basically pry it off of me. And he shattered the energy, and it spread like a huge explosion throughout Pyradel, but ultimately survivable. And Cisco's like, oh, but the people down there, and it's like, no, there are no people left here. They've all been transformed into evil robot things by the mistress, whatever her name is. So at that point, Cisco's like, you saved me. What about Gypsy? And he's like, oh, I didn't save you. I stopped a bomb. And also, Gypsy's definitely dead. She was definitely killed by Mordeth. And Cisco's like, no, you're going to help me. We're going to go rescue her. And he's just like, dude, get over yourself. So then they start fighting each other because he's still not unbrainwashed. They literally have beam struggles here. And he keeps on saying, oh, I tried to get through to him, but with every blast, we counter each other. It was perfectly evenly matched. So we see that he's once again telling Waller more of the story here, and they manage to piece together, or at least Cisco says to Waller, yeah, here's the thing that I learned in our battles and stuff like that. Earth is uniquely susceptible to the tears in the universes that allow these breachers to come through. And that is because we are essentially the cornerstone of the multiverse. So it's just the easiest place for anyone to ever get through from any dimension or universe or whatever. And Waller stands up and says, yeah, I know. The whole reason that we were keeping Gypsy on our world is to essentially get information from her father about the secrets of the multiverse and how we could use their technology to help us as well. It was a deal that she'd be kept here safe from more death. So yeah, that was a whole big reveal at the end here. And Waller's then all right, so obviously the invasion failed. We're not all just under Mordeth's control. So what happened? And Cisco's well, I stopped her. And we see that finally he managed to get the upper hand on Rupture enough to take his axe away from him. It's actually a scythe now that I look at it, but you get the gist of it. And he's like, no, stop. That thing's tuned to my energies. There's no telling what will happen when you use it. And Cisco uses it with his vibe powers, and it just causes this supermassive explosion that just takes out all of the enemy forces. Everyone is dead. And we also see that the wound on his chest caused from the breacher thing has healed up entirely. So at this point, Mordeth sneaks up on him, grabs a hold of his head, and starts trying to, brainwash him. And of course, Armando sees this, and he's like, no, I won't let that happen. And he uses his scythe to cut right through Mordeth and kill her. And that's the point where Cisco says things get really bad because her energy was just being fed through that robot. She actually is like much more magically powerful. So she's just now this energy that's going to be destroying the entire world. Also, Armando got free of the brainwashing because of it. So he's like, no, I am your brother now. And I'm so sorry for the destruction I've caused, but now I have to help take care of that. So he flies Cisco back to Mordeth's base so they can save Gypsy. And then he says, look, here's the thing. You take my scythe. It'll help guide you back to Earth. Meanwhile, I'm going to stay here and fight against Mordeth's power. Gypsy's the key to getting back. And Cisco's like, no, you're my brother. You have to help. You got to come with me. And he's like, no, I need to atone for what I've done. Even if I was brainwashed, I'm still the one responsible. So go. And he pushes him through the portal. Meanwhile, Armando fights against Mordeth's energy. And all of a sudden, they wake up on Earth and everything is different. Or everything's the same, I should say. And so at that point, Waller's like, okay, cool. So you saved Gypsy. Where's she at now? And Gypsy then reveals herself. She was invisible inside the room the whole time. She's like, I'm right here, Waller. I got a knife to your throat. And she's like, yeah, I figured you were in here because how else could Vibe get in here without me noticing? So, yeah. Anyway, are you, what do you want? You said you wanted me to help you with something. And Cisco basically says, yeah, my brother is still out there. He's in whatever dimension universe. You're going to take all of Argus and you're going to figure out where he is and how we can save him. We're going to go rescue him. And Gypsy throws in, also my dad, wherever he's at. So Waller's like, and if I say no? And he's just like, you're not going to say no. I am the only person who is uniquely qualified to deal with these visitors from these other universes. You need me and you got to keep me happy. So you're going to do this. And she's like, okay, fine, whatever, we'll do it. So, and then he throws in the extra little added detail of, also, I don't answer to you anymore. I answer to Agent Gunn. And Waller's like, Agent Gunn's been fired. He is not allowed. And she's like, Agent Gunn or I walk. And it's like, fine, Agent Gunn, whatever. So we get one final thing of, there's a breacher coming through some portals. Agent Gunn is now leading Vibe's leading them to wherever the portals are, and he's running a little crew to start helping take them out. His husband is also there throughout all of this, and we see this little back and forth of texts from Waller saying, hey, I'm relying on you to watch him. It's a big risk that I'm letting you interact with him at all, but you got to remember you work for me first now. And we see that the person that she is texting is Dante, and Dante says, all right, yeah, I'll be watching. So yeah, Gunn and his team run in to fight against the Breacher. Vibe's leading them, and that's the series. It was a rush. It was right here at the end. They rushed it. It moved very quickly. We had to wrap up a bunch of storylines, and honestly, there's plenty that we didn't wrap up. Do I think they did it well? I'll give it like a 60% on that. I think that there is parts that, it was a good story being told of. We had Cisco against his brother. We had Mordeth around. Dante was doing whatever back on Earth. I think it's a lot of good stuff in here, but it's just all of it is so rushed here at the end that it doesn't really feel. It feels like the original story was to last until issue 12, if I had to place my guess. I think there's an additional 2 issues worth in here that just kind of got skipped over. And when they said, nope, you're ending at 10, a big cuts had to be made. For instance, the Dante thing. That's not set up. That's not explained at all. I think they did a okay job at just saying, oh, yeah, here's the big reveal. Dante works for Waller now. But, what does that even mean? Why would he do that? What do they have on him? All things I would love to have answered, but clearly they don't get answered in this book. So, all in all, I'd say that this one, it's a 6. It's a 6. I was debating 0.5, but it is just a flat 6. And that's just mainly, it's not a horrible ending if you just look at it in the broad strokes, but it's because it was so rushed through. It was not given the time that it needed to wrap up these plots in a satisfying way. So, yeah, it's a bit disappointing that we ended on a little bit of a sour note, but I'm sure people will use Vibe all the time now, and he's definitely not just disappearing from the universe for the next 10 years. Oops. Wonder Woman number 26, written by Brian Azzarello, art by Goran Suzuka. So last issue we had Milan was kidnapped by, what's her name? Cassandra, and brought to Chernobyl trying to find where the firstborn is. And Wonder Woman and crew need to go rescue him. So we pick up with Cassandra basically interrogating Milan, saying like, look, you can see all sorts of stuff. I just need you to look out there and find where the firstborn is. And he's like, Cassandra, why are you doing this? I always vouched for you. I have always stuck up for you as a sister. And Cassandra's like, yeah, that's why you're not dead yet. So at that point, there's a big boom, and Orion just immediately swoops in and says, hey, Milan, you're like the closest thing I have to a friend, so I'm going to beat the crap out of all these guys. And he just goes through and starts beating up all of not only the firstborn's hyenas, but also the guards that Cassandra has hired. And one of the guys is like, oh, don't let him escape. And Orion's like, I'm sorry, you think I'm running? And he continues to just beat up everybody. But Cassandra manages to hold a gun up to Milan's head and just says like, all right, how about you go ahead and chill out for a minute here. So we see Wonder Woman, Soraka, and Hermes all show up in Chernobyl, and they're just like, all right, well, Soraka, where are they at? And she's like, oh, they're beneath us. We got to go down. And Wonder Woman makes a comment of like, yeah, no, Chernobyl creeps me out because like, despite the fact I believe in the best of mankind, this is proof of the opposite. This is like the worst of mankind. So we see them just walking through the streets, and all of a sudden, the hyena warriors try to shoot Hermes from behind. Wonder Woman defends them, and they get into a little bit of a fight against the hyenas. So back in London, we see Strife, as we saw last issue, was left in charge of Zola and the baby, and Zola is like just going out to get some food, and Strife is like, well, hold on now, I'm the one in charge. And she's like, okay, well, you're not, like, I don't care about that because I am a grown woman with my own child, so I'm just going to go back to my room with the food now. And at that point, we see that little pin that Strife had made like 2 issues ago. She's holding it behind her back, and it looks like she's going to do something menacing with it, but she walks into the room with Zola, and basically she starts poking and prodding at the idea of, they're all out there defending you. Like, this is all in the end to defend you from harm. And she's like, what do you mean me? And it's like, no, not you, the baby. This is all for the baby. Like, people are willing to give their lives. People have given their lives, and gestures over to, whatever the hell his name was, the stone guy, Lennox, that was it. And says like, yeah, so far 2 people have died, but like, it's probably going to get higher just defending you and your baby. That's something to really think about, and who knows which one's going to be the one who dies next. And we see this hits Zola hard, and she's just staring out the window out at London. So cut back to Orion, who's getting like scans run on him to say like, okay, well, you're definitely uber powerful. Where are you even from? And Cassandra, gun still to Milan's head, doesn't notice Orion's, air scooter, whatever you want to call it, sneaking up behind her. It fires off a shot, but she manages to dodge out of the way and shoots the machine instead. And it's A4, that's what it is. And when Orion runs over to A4 saying like, oh no, how did you even get the technology that could hurt him? He gets shot as well. And he's just like, yeah, I can wound you too. I know how to beat your kind. So she turns back to Milan and says, all right, enough playing around. You're going to tell me where firstborn is. And she takes off his eye mask and allows his eyes are not there. They are replaced with maggots. And he just starts screaming out as he sees a whole bunch of stuff. So at that point, Wonder Woman and Hermes bust in through the roof. It's an all-out fight now. And Cassandra just keeps on turning back to Milan, saying like, all right, come on, before they get here, because I'll kill you. But at that point, tell me what you see. And we cut to essentially firstborn being strapped up in a bath full of honey, and he's just covered in flies that are devouring him, theoretically. And Apollo's just like, yeah, I get some joy out of that. This is nice. I like this. I like torturing you. So we cut back to the fight again. It's continuing on. And Milan still refuses to talk. He's not saying anything. So Cassandra drags him onto her jet, her plane, and says, "Oh, and don't worry, I didn't forget about Soraka. I'll take care of her as well." So we see Milan being like, "Oh no, stop! I saw the most beautiful joyride and most horrible hell ride at the same time." And it's like, "What in the hell does that even mean? Just tell me the location of the firstborn, for Christ's sake." And Milan's just like, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'd rather die to keep you from where he is." And Cassandra is about to kill him, and then Wonder Woman steps in and says, "He's at Olympus. He's at Olympus. Let him go." And immediately everyone's just like, "No, God, Diana, come on. She wasn't supposed to know where he is." So Cassandra says, "All right, thanks for that." Ties back on Milan's mask, throws him out of the ship, and immediately starts taking off. And they are about to give chase, but turns out that she planted a bomb onto Milan's chest that is like embedded into his heart now. So Orion's like, "Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and take care of that." And he starts tinkering with it. And Milan's like, "Wonder Woman, why did you tell her? Like, that whole thing, that was my only saving grace, was that I was going to die without her finding out. Now you've made me feel like completely useless because you just straight up told her anyway. What in the hell?" So at that point, Orion realizes, okay, this bomb's about to go off in like a minute. There is 0 time. I need to take him to New Genesis, and hopefully we can deal with it there. And she's just like, "What? Orion?" And he's like, no. We're not talking about this. This is my friend. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So he puts him onto A4. They go through a boom tube, and Milan makes that callback of the joyride saying, "Oh, is this going to be a joyride or a hell ride?" So at that point, Wonder Woman and Hermes return back to London. They come back home and basically saying like, "Yeah, look, I get why you did what you did, but yeah, it's whatever. We'll deal with it." So Wonder Woman then looks around, realizes Zola isn't around, looks to Strife and just like, "Hey, what's up? Where's she at?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know, but she asked me to give you this letter." And we see that the letter essentially says like, "Hey, Diana, thanks for being my friend, but I put you all at risk for too long. I gotta go and look after myself now." And Strife finally pulls out that pin, and the only thing she does with it is she pops the balloons that were there. I can't even remember why the balloons were there. I think it was someone's birthday. Either way, pops the balloons, and Diana just falls down and cries a little bit. So last page, we get Zola at a train station. She's waiting for the subway, and then all of a sudden, Dionysus shows up, and he's like, "Oh, hey, I was just visiting New York. I travel a whole lot." And he mentions he was here for the truffle harvest. And Zola's like, "What's a truffle? I have no idea what that is." And Dio's like, "Oh, what do you mean, what's a truffle? Oh, I'm going to show you a truffle, all right." So I don't know what truffles have to do with anything, but regarding that issue, I get the necessity of it. We need to have Cassandra find out where the firstborn is. It just kind of felt like these 2 issues, this and the last one, are kind of like a stopgap. Like it's just to artificially extend things, if that makes sense. Like, I guess it's padding. That's kind of what it feels like. I'm sure that there is, obviously, having Zola be able to be left with Strife alone causes her arc to continue. But like all the stuff that happens in Chernobyl just kind of feels unnecessary. It moves pieces around, but it doesn't feel like the plot itself was important, if that makes any sense. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess what it comes down to is I see the purpose of it. I just wish that it was told in a more entertaining way, a more interesting way. It kind of just ended up being, oh, we showed up, we punched a bit, and then it resulted in like not a lot. Like we could have easily have gotten Orion, Milan, and Zola all in their parts where they needed to be without this whole story arc. So yeah, I don't know. Just felt a bit off to me. All in all, I'll give it a 6.5. Honestly, it just doesn't feel 7 worthy. It just doesn't. It feels like, I don't know, maybe I'm just getting a little bit of fatigue with this run where it's very decompressed and not a lot happens at any given time. But yeah, I don't know. For me, it's just this was a bit too slow. This compared with the last issue, I just wanted to pick it up a little bit. So 6.5. Animal Man number 26, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Cully Hamner. So last issue, we had a whole thing where Animal Man was fighting against the Cult of Blood at the Oscars, blah, blah, blah. But the big ending was he got teleported to this seemingly alien planet and is surrounded with a bunch of aliens. So we pick up there. Immediately he's being like attacked / strangled by one of these aliens who's speaking in a way he just cannot understand. Like, it's not even code, it's just symbols. And he's just like, where are we? What's going on? And he starts struggling against the guy, ends up ripping off one of his tentacles, just saying, let me go. Any of you speak any English? What's going on? And then all of a sudden there's a rumble and a roar behind them. And we see this giant, and as best I could describe it, is dark side-like figure, but he's got like huge horns on him, is coming down and is basically about to, he does actually stomp on one of them. We see this yellow alien runs up and throws a punch looking like a hero. And then he like has a falcon like shape around him. It looks like he's accessing the red, but then immediately this dark side looking beast just bites him in half, completely kills him. And Animal Man just looks at all the other aliens around him like, all right, let's run. So they start running towards a nearby cave. We see that Animal Man is about to get grabbed. He calls up the like power of a wolf in order to outrun it, and he instead taps into something else, something unfamiliar, but he uses it to kick this thing and he ends up breaking its finger. So he gets into the cave with the other aliens, still can't talk to any of them, but he's like, okay, that was weird. I tried channeling a wolf, don't know what it was, but regardless, what's going on? One of the other aliens start talking. He's like, all right, let's see if we can do this like via communication somehow. And he's like, look, we're going to work together. He outstretches his hand, offers it to him. The other alien, like, grabs hold of it, and he's like, all right, cool. Actually, you look a little bit like Swamp Thing. I guess I'll call you, like, Space Thing. That makes sense. So he starts talking about his daughter and saying, like, yeah, I was originally with my wife. I was looking for my daughter. And then all of a sudden the rumbling starts again. The dark side beast crashes in through the roof of the cave and just immediately incinerates everybody. All the other aliens are dead, except for Buddy. So Buddy makes his way out. He runs and hides behind a boulder, and he's like, okay, the red isn't working the same as it normally is. I need to tap into something to be able to fight this guy, but what could be strong enough to beat him? And he's like, wait a minute. Of course, that's right. Him. He's part of the web. He's part of the life web. I can tap into him. So he taps into the same alien race that this guy is, uses that strength, throws the boulder at him, and just straight through his head. 100% dead. So Buddy is now the last one left alive, and all of a sudden he hears a voice behind him saying, very good, Earthman. And we're introduced to this creepy-ass looking alien who says that his name is unpronounceable, but he is called the Bridgewalker. And Buddy is immediately like, hey, hi, Mr. Bridgewalker, glad you can understand me. I need to get back to Earth, like, now. My wife and daughter is in danger. And Bridgewalker's like, hey, Buddy, look, I've watched you for a really long time. I'm lived alone here. This is the Seed planet. You have proven yourself to be the best candidate, so I need you to become the next Bridgewalker. And Buddy's like, what? What's a seed planet? What the hell are you talking about? And he's like, yep, nope, everyone else died. It's up to you now. And Buddy's like, I'm going to pass. I just want to get home. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, you don't understand. I am the Bridgewalker. Like, basically we get this whole new lore. Buddy gets a little bit upset that he's not, like, being listened to, but then Bridgewalker just lays it all out. And he says, look, the green and the red are the parliaments for Earth. They are in control of the green and the red for Earth. However, there are millions of planets out amongst the universe. Each of them have their own parliaments of the green and the red, and the rot too, all of them. All of them exist on all these different planets. Wherever there is life, these parliaments end up finding a way. The seed planet is essentially like the source of it all. It is the bridge between all of them, the rot, the red, and the green. And he taps into Buddy's mind to show him all this. And he's like, yeah, it's like a living moon. Regardless, it's the center of it all. But out there in the universe, things are out of flux. Things are crazy. Red's taken over in some places. Green's taken over in others. You, as the Bridgewalker, need to defend the seed planet because the seed planet is weak when things are out of whack. And if the seed planet dies, all life in the universe might very well die as well. So that's your task. And he's like, yep, and I'm old. I'm dying. I don't know how long I have left. I'm going to train you as my apprentice and you will take my place. And Buddy's like, no. And Bridgewalker's like, I'm sorry. Did you just say no to like ultimate cosmic power? How dare you? How dare you? And he starts like attacking Buddy. And Buddy fights back like, look, I've got a family. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I can't just abandon them all right now. And Bridgewalker goes on just like, you don't say no to the Bridgewalker. You don't say no to the seed planet. And then finally he's like, all right, yeah, okay, since I was paying attention to you, I did notice that your family was in trouble, and also something funky's going on with the red on your planet. And he's like, right? I know, that's what I was taking care of. Look, I need to get back there and take care of that. And Bridgewalker's like, I'd love to, but like, I could die any day now, and I need someone to be here to take my place. And he's like, all right, look, how about this? Send me back, let me go back. As soon as we're done with that, you can pull me back here. I will take your place and I will be your Bridgewalker. I will defend the seed planet. And Bridgewalker's like, seriously? You're making a deal? Like, you want to do this? And he's like, yeah, and it's a totally ironclad, totally a promise. I will, let me go back, fix what's red, save my family, and then I'm yours again. And he's like, all right, fine, fair enough. You can go back and help your family. But he's like, oh, thank God, I didn't think that would work. He's like, but I am going to pull you back here when I think it's my time. That could be tomorrow. That could be a year from now. You won't have a heads up on that. And there aren't going to be any more deals. But he's like, all right, yeah, I understand. So at that point, he passes over a little mini seed. It's called the God seed. And he's like, yeah, your body, your human body's not enough right now to carry on what it takes to be the Bridgewalker. So go ahead and eat that and it'll just start prepping your body. It'll give you incredible power of the red from all over the galaxy. And he's like, all right, sure. Do I have to? He's like, what did I say about no more deals? He's like, okay, fine. So he swallows the pill, and then Bridgewalker's like, great, fantastic. You're now evolving into something more. Get on back down to Earth, and I'll see you here soon. So he sends Buddy through the red, back to Earth's red specifically, and he lands inside where the Parliament of Flesh was. But of course, they're all dead. And as he looks around, he's like, oh, geez, the totems. What happened? What's going on? And he looks up and he sees the last surviving totem. And he's like, I did it, buddy. I killed them all. And now I'm going to kill you too. And your little red-headed brat. You're about to become extinct. So, all right, let's just take a second to analyze the implications of what we just got here. So, Buddy, Animal Man, not the avatar of the red, but the champion, I guess if you want to call it. He's now the central point of saving all life in the universe because of the Bridgewalker. We just introduced this concept of there is a central point of life for all of the universe. And I guess that makes sense because obviously the parliaments don't give a crap about like what happens to Martian life? What happens to like life out on all these Green Lantern planets? So it makes sense that there is and that's the other thing I forgot to mention. All the other aliens there, they were all other candidates. They were other champions of the green and the red from their respective planets. But it makes sense. Like that's the thing I like about this is that despite the fact that it's a big swing, it's well thought out in terms of like what we've already established in the lore of, yeah, there would be other parliaments on other planets. That would just make sense. So yeah, no, I'm down with it. I think it's an interesting idea. I am curious to see, because this book only goes up to issue 30, I think. Not even. It's before that. So I'm curious about whether or not we're going to get any sort of resolution to that in this book, or if it's going to be something that's explored elsewhere at a later time. But yeah, I mean, it's a big swing. We'll see how it works out. But all in all, I'm in favor. So I'm going to give this one, I'll give it an 8. I really do enjoy it. I think it's a solid issue. A little bit confusing at times, but they laid out the lore interestingly enough that I want to see more of it. So 8 for this. And that's it. That's all the books put out from DC Comics this December 18th, 2013. Now, as I said at the beginning of the episode, I got a problem. There are only 2 books coming out next week. Also, it's Christmas, but mainly the 2 books thing. So, I cannot stretch 2 books out to be a show. So what I have decided is that even though it is a week 4, technically, DC have effectively treated this as a week 5. They have treated it as, here's the extra week this month where we're just not going to put out anything because who in their right mind is going to go out and get comics on Christmas? So, I'm treating it as a week 5, and that means that I will be doing the backup stories from the past 2 months in order to fill that in. I thought, okay, that solves my problems, but here's the thing. It doesn't. Because there have barely been any backup stories in the last 2 months. I think there might only have been 1 backup story in the past 2 months. Truly, there's just no way to fill this episode's time. So, what I've done instead is I've looked ahead on the schedule. I have gone far ahead, a whole month extra into January, and I saw that there was a week in the middle of the month that they are essentially treating as an actual week 5 with all of the annuals coming out, but they've managed to shove 18 of them in there. 18 issues along with like 5 or 6 annuals. Do you understand how long it would take me to talk about that in any meaningful capacity? It's just, it ain't going to happen. So I'm breaking my rule of only doing things as they come out weekly, and I'm going to reach ahead to that week, take a few of the annuals that don't require any context of the next month's issue, and I'm pulling them back to next week. So we're getting some future books. Trust me, this was the only way. I just had to do it this way. So yeah, I'll probably give a recap of all this next week as well, but just letting you know, this wasn't something I didn't think about. I've given it at least 1 week's of thought. So give me some credit there. Anyway, comics coming out next week, Forever Evil and Justice League, because Jeff Johns cannot keep a schedule, that he has to put out books on Christmas just to keep his schedule. So yeah, that's all happening next week. Be sure to tune into that. But if you have any thoughts on any of the comics that I talked about this week or next week, whatever you want, go ahead and hit me up in the comment section below or on any one of the many social media platforms that we are present on. All the links are in the description and or on screen. But yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next week for whatever sort of hellfire I have managed to conjure up to get that to be a full-length episode. And, yeah, always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.